This video is a brief introduction to the ideology known as classical Marxism and is part of an upcoming series on the various schools of Marxism. It assumes nothing more than a rudimentary historical knowledge. I'm guessing you have read about Marx, his theories, and its applications at some point. The problem is that anti-Marxist writers often strawman him to death or reduce him to a historical footnote. My goal is to adequately explain Marxism in a brief and simple manner. Marx lived in the 19th century. Although German by birth, he spent much of his life in England and France. His father pressured him to study law, but he expressed far greater interest in economics and philosophy at the University of Berlin. He primarily worked as a journalist and is an important figure in the fields of sociology, history, and economics. Friedrich Engels was a close friend of Marx. He was also German by birth. The two men collaborated on their studies of economics and co-authored some of their most important works. Hegel was a German philosopher born in 1770. His works on dialectics, a concept which will be covered later in this video, were of utmost importance to Marx. More commonly referred to as the Communist Manifesto, this book is co-authored by Marx and Engels. It begins with an analysis on economic and political developments in Europe, then moving on to an analysis of the contemporary situation. It concludes with a call to arms for the working class. This book by Engels outlines the goals of the Marxists. While it does not provide an adequate historical analysis, it is a great introduction to Marxism. If you're new to the ideology, I would suggest it as your first reading, followed by the manifesto. Commonly referred to by its German name, Capital is an in-depth analysis of wage labor, productivity, profit, and banking under capitalism. I won't go too far in depth on it in this video, as it really needs one for itself. You can expect that at a later date. Wage labor and capital is very similar to capital, but is much simpler. I would recommend that as an introductory reading. The Dialectic of the Master and Slave is one of Hegel's most well-known works and serves as the foundation for Marx's application of dialectics to class struggles. The ancient Greek philosopher Plato used the term dialectics to describe two opposing sides in an argument. He observed that each side's argument would grow more sophisticated over time. Essentially, they would force each other to advance. Hegel then applied dialectics to forces in history. He argued that opposing forces drive history forward. Marx applied this to class struggle. He claimed that the need of workers to earn high enough wages to survive conflicted with the need of the owners of the means of production to extract profit, and that this would eventually result in a class war. Means of production refers to anything used to produce or transport goods in order to make a profit. This includes factories, railroads, and commercial ships. Unless they are government-owned, they are considered private property. Today, that term is often used, the term private property, is often used to describe homes, cars, even small possessions. Therefore, many people recoil at Marx's call to abolish private property. However, Marx referred to these things as personal property, which he did not intend to abolish. The two most important classes in the modern class conflict are the proletariat and the bourgeoisie, specifically the Hauptbourgeoisie. The bourgeoisie class owns the means of production. In addition, they buy labor and sell the commodities produced for a profit. It is in their interest to pay a low wage for labor in order to maximize profits for themselves. Marx referred to the profit they extract as surplus value. The bourgeoisie are the ruling class in a capitalist society. However, not all people who own means of production are that wealthy or powerful. For example, owning a factory and owning a corner restaurant are very different. Those with wages closer to those of the workers are referred to as petty bourgeoisie. They have much less influence on the government than the haute bourgeoisie, although the government does often protect their interests when they conflict with those of the workers. In common terms, the petty bourgeoisie are small business owners, and the haute bourgeoisie are large business owners. The proletariat are a class that must sell their labor to the bourgeoisie. They work a certain number of hours for a wage, and do not keep the profits of what they produce. Under capitalism, the proletariat has very limited political power. Lumpenproletariat is a term Marx used for workers in illegal industries, basically criminals. He did not believe these people had any revolutionary potential, that they could not be organized into a workers' army. During Marx's time, many people in rural areas still worked as peasants. The nobility, the ruling class before the rise of capitalism, still had remnants. The clergy, church leaders, still remain to this day, but their power has been dwindling since the period known as the Enlightenment, during which secularism grew. Because these classes have conflicting interests, they form contradicting forces in society. The proletariat has a need to earn high enough wages to rent or purchase a home, buy food, and care for their children. They also want to be able to buy some items that could be considered minor luxuries. The bourgeoisie, on the other hand, wants to pay the lowest wages possible so that they can extract a large amount of surplus value. The bourgeoisie, or more specifically the haute bourgeoisie, is the class in power. During the rise of capitalism, they took control of the state. Therefore, they currently are winning the struggle. The proletariat can achieve small victories through unionization. However, those victories can easily be reversed. The stagnation of wages puts many workers in a desperate situation, especially during economic downturns, which Marx claimed were inevitable under capitalism. Unionization and political reform can temporarily assuage these situations, but cannot permanently fix them. For this reason, Marx advocated a workers' revolution. He claimed that the workers need to take up arms in order to defeat the bourgeois state, and to place the means of production under their own ownership. The terms socialism and communism are often misused in modern political dialogue, both by right-wingers who oppose them and by centrists claiming to support aspects of them. When understanding Marx, it is important to know the definitions of these words. After a workers' revolution, the bourgeois state, the current form of government, would be abolished. The proletarian state would then rise in its place. This state oversees the redistribution of the means of production, as well as some private wealth, to the workers, and prepares the workers to manage themselves. Marx referred to this as the dictatorship of the proletariat, because the revolutionary proletariat holds power over the recently overthrown bourgeoisie. The phase of the workers' state is called socialism. This system has been achieved in countries such as Cuba that have undergone proletarian revolution. It is important, however, to point out that all proletarian revolutions have been influenced by Marxism-Leninism and its variations, not by classical Marxism. Communism is the goal of socialism. Communism is when all class struggles have been resolved. When communism has been reached, the state becomes less powerful, practically reaching the point of non-existence. While socialism has been achieved, communism has not. Some countries are referred to as communists because they are led by communist parties with the goal of reaching communism. However, they are socialist. The reasons it has not yet been achieved are too complex to get into in this video. However, I will say now that they have much to do with the risk of foreign invasion. I will address that in later videos on societies such as the USSR, Cuba, China, and Vietnam. Throughout the life of Karl Marx, class conflicts took place in France. Marx wrote books such as The 18th Brumaire of Louis Napoleon to analyze these struggles. Interpretations of these works has become cause for dispute. In 1864, Marx formed the International Workingmen's Association. This organization was intended to unite the working class and bring about revolution. This would later be known as the First International, as there would be more organizations like it after Marx's death. Both during and after Marx's life, conditions changed. This caused Marx to update his theory over time. After his death in 1883, the correct course for Marxist theory to take was disputed. Marxism developed variants which will be discussed in future videos, the next being Orthodox Marxism, the ideology of the Second International.